Have you ever looked at your 3D printer and asked yourself, Self, I hope this part never breaks, because this looks like the most difficult thing to repair. That's right, I'm talking about the V400 Effector. And I gotta tell you, it's even more scary holding it in your hand. But not to fret. Tonight we're going to learn how to disassemble this and see what makes it all tick. So first we're going to start by removing this cover that's on the wire. This plastic cover. On this particular one, there's tie wrap here. Another one here. Here. And one more here. Then, let's just remove it from the wires so we can see what we're dealing with. And this is a lot of wire. And here we have it. This is a spaghetti salad. So we have the covering off. What would be the next logical step? Let's take this fan shroud off. Again, we're just following this in no chronological order. It's whatever seems like the best idea. So now that that's removed, you can see that that screw holding that shroud on there also holds the fan in place. So when you put it back together, make sure you have it all lined up properly. Okay, I guess the next thing would be take the boot off. And you can see that there's a little screw holding the boot in place. So we'll take that out. Now, you'll notice there's this white silicone glue. That's used so that this boot doesn't come loose during the high-speed movements and hit the part. So this may be difficult to take off. I've already taken this one off. So just take it off carefully. Keep pulling it on all different sides until it actually comes loose. And eventually it'll come loose and come off, and you can see that there's white glue stuck to there, and it's also on here and some in there. So be careful taking it apart because you could rip it. So the next logical thing would be to remove the heat block. You can see that there's two small screws holding that heat block in, one here and one here. Let's take that out and see what happens. Because eventually you'll have to replace the heat block for whatever reason. So as you can see, loosening those two little screws, although they do seem like they hold the heat block in, it did not release the heat block. So let's see what could be holding that in. So before we continue on with the heat block, let's remove these fans and fan shrouds to get a better look at what could be holding that heat block in. Okay, so there are a couple of screws we have to remove. Two are on the bottom of the fan shrouds, one on the inside here, and then there'll be one on the other side, I believe. More importantly, on these fans, in a lot of cases, there is a small dab of glue on the inside right here, which again allows the fan not to shake, rattle, and roll as this thing is going at 400 millimeters per second. So we've got to dislodge that glue, and I found the best way to do that is like this. So you put the fan down like that, get a tool, something like this with a long blade. Now you got to be very careful. You don't want to cut yourself, you don't want to cut any wires, and you don't want to ruin the fan. So you slide it in like this, put it in there, and you got to go in this direction. The glue is opposite of the hole, so it's opposite of the hole. Then put it down on the table and just work your way little by little, pushing it. There we go. You see it snap? Okay, so now we can remove these screws here. This one here. This will come right off, and so will the fan. Now, when you remove that little screw in there, and we take that little screw out, it'll allow us to remove the fan itself. And there you have it. And we didn't break anything. That's the great news. So let's take the other one off. I'm pretty sure I already did, so let's take that out. Put these screws over here. And we'll take that out afterwards. Let's take this one off. Now, like I said, I already broke the glue on the other side of this one, so this one should come out fairly easy. Again, we have that little screw in the back there, so we got to take that out. And then this fan should come right out. There we go. Perfect. We didn't break anything, and that's the great news. So you can replace these fans very easily, just as I've shown you, and this will allow us to take a look at the heat block and find out what's holding that thing in. Okay, so far so good, and we haven't even broken anything. So same as on other printers, the blower fans are the wire with the black connector. We'll take that out, put that aside, take off the other one, put that aside. So now you can see that the LED strip board has come loosened also when we took off the fan ducts. So we can undo that and take that off. That's the blue one. Blue. Everything matches up perfectly. Let's take that wire out. And again, it's blue on the other end, so you can't mix this up. Alright, so we may as well take this fan off too, just to get it out of the way. So this is the cooling fan, so that's going to have the white connector. Put that aside. Now we got to take a look and see what makes the logical sense to come off next. All right, let's take the stepper motor off. That was easy enough. We're working our way to that hot end. Once we get this all done, there'll probably be an easier way to do this, but for now, let's see how it goes. So after a little trial and error, and that's because now you won't have to do it, what's holding that heat block in is 2 set screws. One here behind the red wire, and one just above the aluminum plate in here. So now when we take those off, or just loosen them up, the heat block comes right out. So you don't even have to disassemble the extruder. Just loosen those 2 screws, replace your thermistor and heat rod if you want to, or the whole heat block assembly. Put it back in, then tighten up that little screw there. Again, not too tight, but a little tight. And the one inside here, and you're good to go. Done. So let's take the heat block off and show you how to replace the thermistor and the heat rod. So again, we're going to loosen that screw up just a little bit, just above the red wire here. And on the other side of the aluminum plate, there's a little set screw in there. Oops. Pull that out. And again, you can see the wires go through the bracket here. So on the heat block itself, obviously there's the nozzle, the throat, the heat rod, and the thermistor. Both the heat rod and the thermistor have their own little set screw to let them be released. So you can see it's tight in there. Remove that little screw, not remove it, but loosen it. And now the heat rod comes out. Same thing with the thermistor side. Loosen that up a little bit. And now the thermistor comes out. And here you have the heat block assembly. So that's about it. So unless you really want to take this thing apart and clean it out, which looks like you just blow it out really good, you don't even have to take it apart. But if you have to, it's very simple, as you just saw. Just remove these 3 screws and this thing pops right off. So what was my arch nemesis is now a piece of cake. So let's put this thing back together. We'll start with the heat rod. Put it in right in the center there. Tighten it up. Again, not too tight, just a little tight. Thermistor goes in this little slot here. Again, not too tight, just a little tight. But don't forget, heat expands, I think, or contracts, I'm not sure. So here's the heat block assembly. Now you want to make sure you put this in the right way. So with this cooling fins facing you, you want to make sure the nozzle is facing away. So here's the fins, here's the nozzle. Put it in like this. Bend these wires up a little bit, get them out of the way. All right. Now tighten up that little set screw behind that red wire. Straighten it out a little bit. Do the one up top. Again, just snug, you don't want it too tight, but tight enough. All right, so now that's all assembled and ready to go. I almost forgot. First of all, the most tricky part. Gotta put these 2 screws back in here like this. Another one goes on the other side. And you gotta put these little tube things on there. Hold that in, put the tube on there. Put the tube on there. Now that we have the little tubes on there, now we can go ahead and put that back into the effector, like that. Tighten that one up a little. Tighten this one up a little. It'll fall right into place. Just take your time and don't break anything and don't strip anything. So again, fairly tight, but not too tight. All right, so now we have the heat block in there. The little tubes are in there. It's facing in the right direction. Nozzle away from the cooling fins. Wires coming out to the side. That's it for replacing the heat block, thermistor, and heat rod. Easy enough. Then we can go ahead and reassemble the stepper motor. Again, just be careful how you put it in. Make sure it meshes with that white gear before you push it in too hard. Hold it like that. Put in the long screw. Line it up. And there you have it. Let's put the other one in. Again, fairly tight. That's it. Now the stepper motor is there. Everything's looking good. So now we have the heat block in, new thermistor, new heat rod, new nozzle. The stepper motor is in. Now we can assemble the fan ducts. So I put this little LED thing on there first. You can see the holes line up very nicely. So I'm gonna get a vise or something to hold this because it's gonna be very difficult to do it and show you holding it. All right, be right back. So we have our handy dandy vise here that obviously I 3D printed. Put the LED strip on here. But the first thing we should do is put these fans back into the shrouds here. So if you look in here, here's the screw hole, and you look on the other side, that's where a little dab of glue was right in there. So you can either put another little dab in there or take your chances that the fan comes loose. It's up to you. But I think I might put a little dab in there. So to put these back together, you can also see the little dab of glue was here on the fan as well. So there's the screw hole. Now here's the bottom of the fan. Obviously you want that to be the blower end, so you gotta put the shiny side out like that, because it's gonna sit like this in the thing. Then take this little screw, put it back in that hole, and screw that in. Okay, so now that's holding that in perfectly. Then, obviously, run the wire through. And that goes like that. And you put these screws back in. I will use some needle nose pliers to help put that in there. So it's probably easier to put these little screws in there first while you have this out so that you can reach in there. Or not. So once you finally figure out how to get the screws in the holes into that plastic thing, now you can screw them in. And make sure the LED thing is straight. Tighten up one side, then the other. And we'll move on to the next side. Again, in case you missed it on the first side, shiny side is out. Put that in there. Drop in this little tiny screw. And that'll screw right in there. Run the wire through. And of course, getting these two screws in is a challenge. So like I said, once you get past the challenge of getting these two little screws to get in there properly, then just tighten them down. There you have it. Fans are back in. Hot end is in. Everything's in. It's looking good. All right. Let's finish it up. All right, let's put that cooling fan back on. Don't forget to line it up properly so that when we put the shroud back on, everything lines up perfectly. Because that bottom screw is going to get into that bottom hole there. And that's one thing that I noticed. Make sure that you put it in straight, otherwise it's going to hit that knob. So see that? See what I just did? First I put it in that way. Put it in straight under the knob, then tighten it down. That's it. It's almost all back together. So now we can put the boot back on. So one thing I did notice is the set screw for the heat rod is actually the boot screw. So don't put a set screw in there. Just put the boot back on. And this little screw actually holds the boot on, and it holds the heat rod in place. So see, I'm doing this so that you don't have to figure it out. See that? It's holding the heat rod down and it's holding the boot in place. Make sure that this is down past the nozzle. So that's about it, except for one more item, actually two more items. Remember this LED rod, the LED light? We gotta plug that back in here. Perfect. And the only other thing left to do is put all this spaghetti back in the wrap. Well, one thing that I'm not going to do is use the original wrap. I bought some inexpensive wire covering that is more flexible and a lot easier to use. We're going to be doing that. So here's the stuff that I bought. You could see it's a lot more flexible than that plastic and a lot easier to work with. So first we got to cut it off to the right length, which I believe is about 2.5 feet. I'll measure right now to be sure. All right, so you can see I started it off here. I'm certainly not going to show you this whole process because it takes two hands and a little bit of patience and skill to get that wire in there. But I should give you an idea how it goes. Just push the wire in, fold that around. And then just keep doing that all the way down. Just like that. And here you have it, all wrapped up nice and neat. Now I'm just going to put some wire ties just like you saw, a couple of different places just to make sure everything stays together. And I'm going to put one over here just to hold it in place right here where it was originally. So here it is, the final product. New sheathing and everything. I put a little bit of tape here just to keep it from fraying. And tie wrap here, tie wrap there and there. And you can see it's like brand new. So that's how you take on your arch nemesis and beat it. Now we can do this in a few minutes. I mean, probably 30 minutes I could have done this whole thing had I not been, showing you everything. So it's not a big deal. It's not as big a deal as I ever thought it was. And actually it's pretty fun. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, just leave them below. See you in the next video.